from the ballot. That's so complex that the average person can't understand what's going on and doesn't follow it, and they're bored by it. They're bored by it. They make participating in democracy very boring and bureaucratic. And they say, we're not doing away with democracy. We're just making a procedural change. You just have to file a little paperwork. Well, that's how you take away a constitutional republic. That's how you apply a filter, and this is an important concept. It's a statistical filter placed in front of the offices of power. And it's a statistical filter that filters out the intelligent from the juries. Now, they're not saying that a smart person can't get on a jury. They're not saying it's illegal. They're not directly outlawing it. They're just making it really unlikely. Because you have to figure out, when you're called for jury duty, you have to figure out to say, yeah, I agree with every law. And when they ask you these unconstitutional questions, could you send someone to prison for a marijuana offense? They're looking for yes, Your Honor. If you're smart enough to know that that would be an immoral, stupid thing to do, and that you would never do that, and you say, no, Your Honor, they've used your honesty, your narrow honesty, against you. They've used your hidebound, stupid, narrow view of reality. You're going to be honest to the detail level of the hierarchy, but you're going to be totally dishonest to the highest level of the hierarchy because the government schools never told you that. They never taught you civics. And that, Richard Dreyfuss is right. We do need to reinstate civics class, but it won't do any good if it's taught like social studies, history, and government classes are now. Those are the classes that took the place of civics in a sleight of hand motion over the last 50 years. They phased out physics and they replaced history and civics with social studies, which is really socialist studies. They're teaching your kids how to be good little socialists, how to be too stupid to rebel, and how to be obedient enough to work in a chump deal for their entire lives. That's what they're teaching you in socialist studies. So, the solution is just to smarten up, and when you're called for jury duty, and they ask you all the questions, you answer like all the other people answer. However it is that they're answering, you appear to be conscientious but stupid supporter of the existing establishment. That's what they're looking for. Conscientious but stupid. And hey, it works in every other area of their existence. Conscientious but stupid. That's what keeps the central bank and all these grossly unconstitutional corporations profitable. Stupid enough to buy the beta release of the new product at super expensive prices before the market drives the price down through competition. And they want to eliminate all the competition too, because they want to protect the incumbent corporations. Because if they didn't do that, there'd be enough displacement caused by competition to drive down prices across the board and to keep innovation up across the board. And that would mean that the productive effort was continually solving new problems until all of the problems of humanity were solved. And if all of the problems of humanity were solved, why would we pay the central bank and the prison profiteers to do nothing of value? Why would we pay them to ruin innocent lives by the millions? There are 2.3 million people in prison in this country. It's definitely a police state. How did we become a police state? Incrementally and through applying statistical filters, because Joe Sixpack isn't smart enough to understand what a statistical filter is. So have we got a deregulator for president? Well, let's see. Regulation's a way of getting around property rights, right? Because if you really did something wrong, you don't need a regulation to say that it's wrong. A criminal court can decide it's wrong, or a civil court can decide it's wrong if it was a contractual dispute. And juries are great at applying justice in civil disputes and criminal disputes, assuming that they've either learned the proper instructions because they had a high school civics class, or they had an honest judge give them the proper instructions, that you're supposed to find injury and intent, and if there's no injury and intent, then you're supposed to find the defendant not guilty. or you're not supposed to find damages for the plaintiff in a civil case. And juries are great at that, at applying that level of judgment and reason and logic. There's always a smart person on the jury unless they're weeded out before the trial. So that's how we've gotten this regulator for president. And think about what that means to be a regulator and to apply regulations. You're basically saying, well, you know, the criminal common law and the criminal civil law are not good enough. They're not good enough to find fault. There's some issue that's so complex that we just have to make a one-size-fits-all rule because of the complexity of the situation. It's unnecessary complexification in all cases. Because if there is no core injury or core intent, let's say that there's an injury arising out of incompetence. Well, how long does that surgeon stay in business who let's say it's a really serious issue, a life or death issue, right? It's a surgery. And there was an incompetent surgeon, or a surgeon screwed up and did something wrong. Well, it can only be a civil case then, because there was no intent, right? Because he doesn't intend to kill people and drive his clients out of business. Or maybe there is intent. Maybe he killed somebody who was a political rival. He disagreed with their politics and he killed them. Either way, 12 randomly selected people are going to be the best way of determining bias, whether there's criminal intent or not. And if there is no criminal intent in a civil case, what the restitution to the injured party should be, and all of that does not require a single additional law from Congress beyond what existed in 1900. So let's say that at some point we had the theoretical optimal level of law. Well, I'm going to answer this phone call, but you get the idea. This guy's not a deregulator, he's a regulator, and we're fucked.